next area we want to take a look at is to go back and review a little bit more about the specific developments in the late 15th, early 16th centuries of the powers that are now emerging in Europe as the most vital and have the most influence as we move forward. One will be England, the other will be Spain, and the other will be France. And what we want to take a look at here is a couple of issues. This is a portrait of King Henry VIII, who will be a very powerful influence in the development of English history as we move forward here. His father, Henry VII, had been the one who had finally won the Wars of Roses. Now, in the 15th century in England, there had been a major civil war after the time period of the losses of the 100 Years' War. There had been a lot of instability in English politics, a series of weak kings, a lot of sort of backroom struggle amongst the different dynastic families. But the bottom line is, by 1485, King Henry VII has finally conquered and taken over. He has married the heiress of the opposite family that was struggling in the Civil War. There seems to be now the formation of what's going to be the Tudor dynasty. The Tudor family is going to be now in charge of England. Henry VII solidifies it, recreates a sense of authority and structure, reasserts royal control over much of England, cleans up a lot of the dynastic politics and the Civil War issues. And when he dies, his son Henry VIII, who's depicted here, will then be the one who moves into the future. There will be some other issues, though, that are going to be difficult to deal with. For example, Henry here was the second son. He had an older brother named Arthur. His older brother Arthur had been married off to an heiress from Spain. Her name is Catherine of Aragon. She had come to England as the bride. Everybody's happy and proud for this dynastic union between this growing imperial family, or growing monarchical family in what you know as modern-day Spain, and now the English, who are both aggressive and expanding and successful. But then Arthur dies. And now Catherine is in England and will eventually be married to Henry as a sort of a second choice to keep this dynastic union, this marriage going. It will create some problems as we move forward, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But Henry is going to be now this Renaissance prince, the one who is having a sense of humanism, engagement, and he's going to be very deeply involved in English politics, religion, and as we move forward, we're going to see him offering some deep challenges to the way in which the Christian movement works in England. We'll also take a look at some of the ideas here of Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile and Leon, right? Isabella la Católica, sometimes as she referred to in the textbook. This is the royal couple that will unite. They had married in 1469, and they maintained their own control. For example, Ferdinand continued to control the Kingdom of Aragon, which is the area on the Mediterranean coast of what you know as modern-day Spain, city of Barcelona, all the way down to like Valencia, that area. Isabella had inherited and controlled most of the central part of Spain, from the Atlantic coastline all the way down to the edges of the Mediterranean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Their dynastic union, their marriage, is then going to create modern Spain. The descendants of this family, this union, will then become the kings and queens of modern Spain. This is the last time that it's disunified. Their children will unify by inheritance and create what you're going to know as modern-day Spain. What's also going to be interesting is that Isabel, when she is younger and struggling to assert her independence, makes a very clear and calculated plan to work closely with the Roman Catholic Church in her territories, and in many ways keep their support as the legitimate, rightful, chosen by God queen, on the basis of her inheritance, because many of her male relatives had died. She, as a medieval monarch, a late medieval monarch in an area that doesn't necessarily respect female authority, she has to be very careful in what she's doing in terms of her own personal behavior, how she reaches out and works with all the famous royal families, and also how she deals with her cousin, in this case, her husband, Ferdinand. Now, what's also going to be interesting is that as each of these groups of monarchs move forward, Henry in England and Isabel and Ferdinand in what you're going to be calling Spain, they also are going to be working towards the idea of consolidating control over everything they can. And in each case, they're going to be taking a look at how they can solidify control of the classes, the legal system, and the religious communities in their territories. That they're going to have in common, and we'll talk some more about that in a second. Now, another person to talk about in this context of this time frame is going to be King Louis XI of France, all right? He is going to be increasingly looking at the idea of taking control over the tax system. And as we know and we've talked about, unless you have money, your plan for government is kind of moot. Louis will be the one who in time will have control over what's called the taille, which is the major form of taxation in France. And as we have already expressed and we've talked about, if you are in government and you control the government and you have a significant amount of money, tax revenue, to pursue your ideas and concepts, you're already halfway on to doing that. If you don't have the financing, then that really weakens the central authority of the monarch. And in the case of both the English and the French in this example, and later on with Ferdinand and Isabella, the control of taxation will be vital. With Castile and Aragon, okay, with the union now of Ferdinand and Isabella, we are going to create the modern-day Spain. And they are going to fulfill the end of that reconquest. Remember, the Muslim forces had entered into what you know as modern-day Spain in 711. They will be there until they are expelled in 1492. And that date is going to be key because once Ferdinand and Isabella finally consolidate their control over all the areas that they have in what you know as Spain, what's going to happen next then is that they have the ability, the interest, and maybe even the luxury and financing of trying to take a look at somebody who could maybe enrich them even more. And we'll be, of course, talking about the role of Christopher Columbus in a bit. But what they have to do first is they have to reconquer. And so finally in 1492, they take the last bastion, the last area of Spain controlled by the Muslims, an area called Granada. Your textbook, when it covers this, may show you several of the palaces in and around Granada. The architecture that was called Moorish-style architecture was a very distinct one. It was different from the way in which the Europeans did some of their construction and decoration. Remember, within Islam, of course, it is a taboo or wrong to ever depict living beings or humans in terms of artistic things because sometimes it was seen as idolatry. The Christian movement is less inclined to worry about that, but this is an element that makes the distinctive art of the Muslim area called Granada very, very interesting for us. What's going to happen then in the future is this. Isabella and Ferdinand are going to have some special control over the church in their area. They're going to be very closely allied with it. And as we mentioned earlier, many people in this part of Europe are Muslim, some are Jewish, and some are Christian. What's going to happen is, with this idea of the reconquest, a religious crusade warfare that now has stretched on for about 700 years in the history of this era, or this area, there is going to be some overflow. In the sense was, is this reconquest, is this struggle to take back all the territory also going to be an opportunity for reimposition of Christianity over everybody who lives there? In other words, will the Muslims and the Jews have to be expelled from the territory? And what will happen is, by 1492, Isabella will make that clear. She, in 1492, not only wins the territory of Granada, not only will she start to sponsor Columbus directly, but she also orders all those who are Jews to leave her kingdom. There is a sense here that this is going to be then an understanding that if you're not fully with me, if I'm the queen of this territory, and I am a devout Roman Catholic Christian, and you are not, that could be a sense of disloyalty. It could also be a sense of problems for the state. So within the context of what they're going to do, she is going to be the one who will be working with the Inquisition. And the Inquisition will be the religious investigatory arm of the Roman Catholic Church. They will go out and investigate the faith of people inside the kingdom, and if they are found wanting or missing, they will be hauled in for questioning and conversation. The Inquisition will be the sort of muscle of the Catholic Church to go and make sure that all the people who live in her territory are obeying the ideas and concepts of the Roman Catholic faith. And if you are not, you're going to be investigated, and there will be potential penalties, expulsion, or potentially death should you take it to that point. But what's going to happen then is there's a sense of what used to be in medieval Spain, a sort of a living together, a toleration essentially of each other. In the Middle Ages, there are many places in what you know as modern-day Spain where the population is very much mixed between Muslim, Jewish, and Christians. And unfortunately, over time, with this kind of pressure, there will be then the marginalization of the Jews and the Muslims and the triumph of the Christians. Now, as we move forward then, what you want to take a look at is these three places, France, England, and what you're now going to be calling Spain. They're going to be the three leading military and economic powers as we go into the 16th century. They're going to be the ones who will be exploiting a lot of the economic opportunities overseas in building colonies, and they're also going to be the ones who will benefit from a large-scale trade network and the creation of plantation slavery in many places in the New World. Take a look at this era of history as we see the rise of what's going to be called the Atlantic powers, England, France, and Spain, and take a look and see if there are some sample questions that will help you understand this era.